Whether it's cars, comics, video games, or violins, there's a little geek in all of us. It's time to give your geek a voice. It's time for Geek Therapy. Here's your host, Johnny Hamburger.
Before we get started, guys and gals, I've got my email set up now. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. That's geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. No spaces at all. Send me your request. Send me your geek subjects. Let's talk about your geekdom. If you're into bugs, that's great. Let's talk about them little critters. Send me an email. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Now let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Geek Therapy. My goodness, would it bother anybody if I start off this show by singing some lyrics that are poignant to me, that I often think about over the course of my life? They mean something. They've always meant something to me. So, without further ado, let me try this here. Just bear with me. Just humor me for a second. Well, I swear sometimes there's asphalt running through my veins, and let me go. Don't ever pull my reins, and I'll return with cuts and bruises and scars, but the smarter, and lick my wounds and try again just twice as hard, and maybe you're the only one who sees anything good about me. You know, we get told no so often in our lives. We keep trying and trying and trying, and we keep hearing no, no, no. But a friend told me recently that no just means not now. It doesn't mean stop trying. It doesn't mean give up. No just means not now. And I'll give a little anecdote. A few weeks ago, when I had a meeting with my bosses for the show idea, I had wanted my own show for a few years. You know, when I first started here, well, it was called Clear Channel when I first started. Now it's iHeartMedia. But I wanted a show. I said, what am I doing here if I'm not moving the ball forward? So many times, and I don't fault the higher ups for saying no, because what they were really saying was not now. And I knew that, not now. That meant keep trying. So at the beginning of this year, I basically said, I want my own show this year. What am I doing if I'm not pushing, rolling the ball forward? I want my own show this year. So I went into the meeting. I don't want to say overly confident, because I guess I wasn't overly confident, but I definitely had been told no so many times, been told no enough times that I had managed my expectations. And that's another little motto of mine, manage expectations. Whether it's professionally, romantically, if it's one thing life has taught me, it's manage expectations. So I went into that meeting confidently managing my expectations. So I wasn't very nervous. Truth be told, I fully walked into that meeting assuming I'd just be told no again. So maybe it came off as an air of confidence or whatever. It wasn't confidence. It was I'm prepared to be let down again. But long story short, they liked it this time for whatever reason, and I got the green light. And here I am, Geek Therapy Radio. I don't know what's going to become of this show, the longevity of it all. I hope it does really well. I hope you really enjoy listening to it. And more than anything, I hope that each week after each episode, you feel better about yourself. You feel more confident, not just with your particular geekdom, like you get, rejuvenates your passion for for your geekdom. You know, if you're an artist, if you like to paint, after an episode, you feel empowered and you feel invigorated to go paint some more. I'm not just talking about that. That certainly brings you joy, and that's certainly, whatever your geek thing is certainly a big part of your life and a big source of comfort and a big source of confidence. But just on the whole, I hope you, after each of these episodes, you just feel better about yourself, confident in all areas of your life. Because we all get so used to hearing no. But guess what? Every once in a while, you hear yes. Go for it. You have our support. So the last lyrics that I sang there, maybe you're the only one who sees anything good about me. Eventually, you're going to find the person, the people, who sees something good about you. And they are out there. You know those people. The same people who tell you no so many times, it's not because they don't like you. It's because they think you're just not ready yet, which is fine. That's where growth happens. That's where you formulate and conceptualize and make concrete your ideas. That's where you have your battle plan. That's where you form your strategy, is by being told no. So maybe it's appropriate to geek out about the word no. And I don't mean to sound like Tony Robbins here. That's not my shtick. But whatever you keep getting told no about, just form your resolve and rephrase it. No just means not now. So keep working. Keep doing your thing. Keep geeking out about what you're geeking out about. Your day job, your 9 to 5, if you're lucky it's 9 to 5. My 9 to 5 is 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., but whatever. If you don't derive, all-consuming satisfaction from your day job, and who does? Only a lucky few. Focus on your geek thing. And who knows, maybe one day your geek thing can become your job. And it's really awesome when that happens. But you have to be told no constantly to form your resolve. I thank God every day people tell me no and have told me no. And guess what? I'm going to hear no a lot more. Just because they said yes to my little show idea here doesn't mean that they're going to say yes to everything else. I'm probably going to hear no way more often now. And that's fine. That's what strengthens your resolve. If you give up at the first no, it's not meant for you. If you're a musician and you try to get a gig and you throw away your guitar or the piano after the first no, maybe you're not cut out for it. So, we got pretty poignant here in this first segment. I busted out the big guns early, trying to encourage you, trying to encourage my fellow geeks out there. And I'm going to leave it at that for the first segment. I think that's pretty good. You heard me sing? That was interesting. So there's more geek therapy to come. Stick around after this short commercial break. What is it, like 4 minutes or something like that? You got 4 minutes. Do whatever you got to do in 4 minutes. And I'll be right here on the other side of the break. So stick around. More geek therapy to come. Welcome back to Geek Therapy. Did you like that first segment? Did it make you grow an inch taller? Do you feel more powerful, more confident, or at least just more at peace? All my geeks at peace, peaceful geeks. Anyways, I saw a movie a week or two ago that I didn't talk about in my first show because the first show I wanted to establish, it was the meet and greet show. Who I am, what the show is about. So I didn't really touch on too many geek subjects until the last segment. But I'm going to talk about this movie now because I don't see a ton of movies. I don't see a lot of movies because it's just so, movies have become so disappointing to me. Here's my measure of success in going to a movie. Here's what I want. Here's my lowest expectation and desire for a movie I go see. I just want to get to the end and not want my money back. If I get to the end of a movie and I don't feel that my intelligence has been insulted, that the entire movie hasn't been whittled down to appeal to the lowest common denominator, if I feel that they earned my $12 or whatever, the movie gets a thumbs up from me. A+. I didn't want my money back. That means it was a good movie. And that's kind of crappy. That's kind of a cruddy sentiment because we've all been to movies where we're just like, that was dumb. That movie was terrible. So, a movie I saw a couple weeks ago. I went and saw Logan. Oh boy. Oh boy, Logan. And I remember when I first saw the previews for that, because I'm not like I said, I'm not a big comic book geek. I am well aware of the X-Men and relatively familiar with the X-Men universe. But I've never been huge into comic books. The only comic books I bought as a kid, and this is going to be lame. This is going to be so lame. The only comic books I bought as a kid, and I maybe bought 3 or 4 issues tops. Oh, I can't. This is so embarrassing. Was Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm going to pause just for a second to let you laugh without missing anything. Okay, the second's over. Stop laughing. So I never really bought a lot of DC comics or Marvel comics. I was never huge into the superhero universe. But when I have seen a couple of the X-Men movies. They're fun. They're not memorable to me. But anyways, when I first saw the previews for Logan, at the very base level, I thought, I'm going to be interested to see this movie. Not because I care about Wolverine or the X-Men, but because at the carnal level, it's going to be really interesting, maybe fun, to see what Wolverine could do in the freedom of an R rating. Not that I'm huge into gore or anything like that. I'm not. But an R rating allows a lot more creative freedom for a character to develop, to become well-rounded, I think. When the language isn't restricted and when violence isn't restricted, as long as the violence is part of the story, not gratuitous. But it would be I just thought it would be very fun to see how Wolverine, with the big blades coming out of his fists, what those things would really do if depicted semi-realistically. You know, it's like in a PG movie when someone gets slashed with a sword. Like, a sword's going to mess you up. And the rating kind of takes you out of it. You know, someone gets sliced across the neck with a samurai sword and they just kind of fall down. That's not... You kind of roll your eyes. I understand. It's PG. You can't show a whole lot. Like the Ninja Turtles movies, which were still awesome. The early 90s ones, with not the non-Michael Bay Ninja Turtle movies, which were tragic. Oh, I can go off on a whole tangent about the Michael Bay Ninja Turtle movie. Oh, geez. It makes me sick to think about how they destroy the story. Anyways, back to Logan. In the freedom of a superhero movie with an R rating. And I know that in the years before, I saw Spawn way back. When did Spawn come out? Late 90s? That was an R rating. And I know Deadpool came out recently, and that had an R rating. But I didn't see Deadpool. Deadpool kind of became this meme. And I wasn't really interested. You know, maybe I'll see the movies at some point. But Logan with an R rating, that just seemed very, very cool from the get-go. But I didn't know, that going to see the movie, I didn't know that it would be one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's a big statement. And I thought that maybe I was alone in that. I thought surely me thinking it's the greatest movie ever, because I don't see a lot of movies. That's just me. No one's going to feel my sentiment. I thought, honestly, walking out of there, I thought that it was Oscar worthy. And I don't care about the Oscars either. But I walked out thinking that was such a high caliber of movie on all levels. The acting, the cinematography, the set design, everything. I thought it was truly great. It was honestly the best movie I've probably seen in the last 10 years. That's just me. That's just me talking. Maybe you've seen better. Maybe you don't think it deserves any Oscars. But again, I thought I was alone in that sentiment. But no, apparently a lot of people think it deserves an Oscar. Now, we all agree, sort of, that it probably won't get nominated for one. But I am not alone, actually, in thinking that Logan does deserve some sort of Oscar nod. My only trivial gripe with Logan, and I'm not giving away any spoilers here. I'm not going to do that to you. My only trivial gripe, and it is so small, because the rest of the movie was so great, and what I'm about to say, my gripe really doesn't matter. But my gripe, with my little artist eye, I guess, was how crappy the limo looked. It's not giving anything away in the movie to say that basically Logan is now an Uber driver, a limo driver. But that limo, the prop team, whoever fabricated that limo, it looked like paper mache just stuck to the side of an existing Chrysler. It looked bad. The panels were all wonky, and I know it wasn't because the limo was supposed to look beat up, because it wasn't originally supposed to get beat up. At the beginning of the movie, it's clean. But, so it wasn't because they tried to make it look crappy. It just looked crappy because it seemed like it was an afterthought. It literally looked like, to me, they had just taken a Chrysler limo and stuck paper mache all over it. But that's one reason if the rest of the movie wasn't just almost perfect, the limo looking trashy would have been a much bigger deal to me. And that's one reason I don't like a lot of movies, is I can't shut my analytical brain up. I can't just sit there and absorb a movie. The movie has to be really great to absorb me into it. I saw a few months ago, I saw the Brad Pitt World War II. I forget what it was called even. I forget what it was called. But it was Brad Pitt, World War II. Him and his wife are a spy, whatever. But the movie had so many it played to the lowest common denominator. It was really patronizing to the viewer. Very obvious plot points were exposed at the very beginning, and you knew that it was going to come back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy from the beginning, because it was obvious and lazy. The movie was decent. I would probably never see it again. It was okay. And it was okay just because I am sort of a history buff. So I will see a lot of movies having to do any periodic era movies. So a World War II movie, whether it's a love story or not, I'll probably go see it just to, because I love Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, and World War II in general is just fascinating. But I got so taken out of the movie at the English subtitles when Brad Pitt is saying, "You look beautiful." That's what the subtitle said. He's speaking French, and the subtitle says, "You look beautiful." No, what he actually said in French is, "You are beautiful." And I went on a stupid Facebook rant about that. The subtitles completely changed the meaning of what he said, and it trivialized what he said. When you're telling a woman she is beautiful, you are saying that she is the definition of beautiful. She is the embodiment of the term beautiful. When you say she looks beautiful, You're saying she's not actually beautiful. She just has the appearance of it. That you're at least saying, at most, it's only skin deep. So when you're saying you are beautiful, that's through and through. Through your skin, through your spirit, through your soul, you are beautiful. And that's what his character said. But the subtitle said, you look beautiful. No! Dumb. Took me out of it. Okay, that's the end of the second segment. We talked about movies. Are you happy? I talked about comic book movies. We're just having fun. I'm having fun. Whether you're having fun or not is to be determined, TBD. But we'll be right back with more Geek Therapy. Please stay here. It's gonna be great. More Geek Therapy coming up. And while you're listening to commercials, go follow me on Instagram, Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. Just search it, Geek Therapy Radio. It's on Instagram. And send me an email, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Like I said, we'll be right back.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and we're feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be.
Where are my computer geeks at?
Everybody will be.
Where are my computer geeks is at? That makes me a nerd saying is at, doesn't it? I can say whatever I want though. That's the fun part. That's the beauty of this whole experiment is I can say whatever I want. So where are my computer geeks at? You don't even have to be a super geek about computers to appreciate this segment because it's something that I've been excited about for almost a year, and it's happened. It happened recently. Back in the day, and by the day I mean pre-2007, there used to be among chip makers, among CPU makers, Intel, obviously, and AMD. I kind of emphasize AMD because there might be a whole generation of listeners, maybe in their teens or early 20s that never grew up with the competition that AMD used to provide against Intel. And Intel now, last I checked, I think as far as CPU sales, I think they held well over 90% of the market share up until now in 2017. It's something that's like 93% or 97% of market share, which as far as the consumer is concerned, isn't good. And it's been a long time coming for AMD to come out swinging. I used to have an AMD laptop, and I used to have an AMD build, an AMD PC. But AMD kind of fell off for whatever reason. They don't have the resources in the R&D money or resources, like I said, to develop chips that would compete against Intel. And I like Intel. I have no problem with Intel. Intel CPUs... and that was part of the AMD's problem. Intel CPUs were superior. And I'm not saying that as an Intel fanboy. I hate that term. People saying, oh, you're an Intel fanboy. Team Blue. Well, we're not fanboys. That's just all that's been available. And if you're trying to build a good gaming PC or a quality workstation, you needed to go with Intel for pretty much the past 10 years. Had nothing to do with fanboy. Believe me, I and many other PC enthusiasts would have wished and prayed that AMD would create something that could just compete with Intel CPUs. It wasn't that we were Team Blue. It was that Team Red sucked. And we can say that. And that is very fair to say. Team Red, AMD, has not had a quality CPU that could compete with Intel for a long time until this year, until Ryzen. And I have been so stoked as an Intel user for the past 10 years, so stoked at all the hype surrounding Ryzen. Let me explain one more thing. I do a lot of production, audio production. And back 10 years ago, at least, Pro Tools, first of all, Pro Tools used to only work on a Mac. Then Pro Tools came to PC, but required an Intel processor. You could not run Pro Tools and a lot of other software, not just audio production software. A lot of other software was incompatible with AMD. So it wasn't just, again, it wasn't a Team Blue thing. It wasn't a Team Intel thing. It was just that software wasn't developed for AMD anyways. The chips were inferior to Intel, and software wasn't developed for AMD. All that's changed now. Pro Tools will run on AMD processors, and Pro Tools has become native. A lot of software has become native, and what native means is that it will run, there's no restriction to what hardware, there's less restriction to what hardware it will run on. Pro Tools, for instance, for a while you could only use Pro Tools converters, A to D converters, or Apogee, I believe. One or the two. Whoever was in bed with Pro Tools, with DigiDesign, and now Avid, you could only use that hardware, and it had to be on a Mac. Then it was only that hardware on a PC if it was an Intel. And you still had to use the proper A and D converters that they approved. A to D, not AMD, A to D, audio, analog to digital, and vice versa. So we got a little bit deep into PC hardware and compatibility. So anyways, Ryzen. And I knew the hype about Ryzen was real, wasn't just hype, when Intel released their new CPUs. Because here's the interesting thing. And it was too little too late, sort of, I think. The new unlocked i3. The i3 is a dual-core, hyper-threaded chip. And for years, I've wanted an unlocked i3. An unlocked i3 that you could overclock. Would have been a great choice. But now they've released it in this newest generation, and it's like $20 cheaper than an i5. And an i5 will, even a locked i5 will, mostly destroy an unlocked i3. So just spend $20 more on the actual quad-core i5. So the unlocked i3 was too little too late. But that was an indicator to me that Intel was shaking in their boots for what AMD was about to do. And what really solidified it for me, which made the hype truth, wasn't the unlocked i3, it was them adding hyper-threading to their $60 dual-core Pentium. $60, that is such incredible bang for the buck. And what that told me is AMD is Intel knows that the new AMD chips are going to be amazing. And they are going to be half the price of Intel's offerings. So when Intel started to when Intel decided to cannibalize its own product line by offering, finally, an unlocked i3 and a hyper-threaded Pentium, those are two budget offerings that Intel decided. Because the hyper-threaded Pentium means that instead of buying an i3, which is a hyper-threaded dual-core, you could buy the Pentium, which is also now a hyper-threaded dual-core, for less than half the price, which is awesome for us. And the unlocked i3 theoretically means that the consumer can now save a few bucks versus getting the i5. So that's how I knew that Ryzen, AMD's Ryzen chips, were going to be awesome. And Ryzen has been released. Ryzen has come out. And guess what? They are amazing. Intel chips still, you can argue this all day back and forth. They are still better. But that wasn't the concern. What is amazing and what I was hoping for is that if the Ryzen chips are 90% as good as the Intel chips, but cost half the price, Intel is going to have a conniption. And that conniption is going to come in the form of lowering prices of, let's say, the i7, 7700K, for instance. Start bringing down the prices of that. To compete with AMD, Intel's not going anywhere. AMD is not going to take out Intel. But Intel is not going to enjoy that 93% market share. Intel is going to have to tell the stockholder, we didn't make as much money last quarter. Their value might go down a bit. That's what they're scared about, is the shareholder, which is a blessing and a curse to any company. I think once you start adding shareholders to companies, that it gets frustrating, let me just say. And I should really maybe zip my lips on that subject a little bit. It's frustrating when you know a company is bowing to the shareholder and the shareholder alone. So Intel was scared for their shareholders. And God bless AMD, because Ryzen is awesome. And I can't wait to do a new AMD build for the first time in a decade. It's going to be awesome. Still probably going to use an NVIDIA GPU. Guys, there's one final segment of Geek Therapy coming up. So during these commercials, make sure you hit me up on Instagram. Geek Therapy Radio. It's on Instagram. Once again, that's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. And start sending me your emails. What do you think about the new Ryzen CPUs? I think they're awesome. But what do you think? GeekTherapy@iHeartMedia.com. Send me an email. GeekTherapy@iHeartMedia.com. Hi, everybody! Hi, Dr. Nick. You remember when Simpsons was funny? I didn't originally plan on talking about The Simpsons in this segment, but it is okay to geek out about old cartoons when they were funny. Ren and Stimpy was funny before they sold it to whoever. SpongeBob was funny before they sold out. And I'm not sure if The Simpsons categorically categorizes as being sellouts, but there was a golden era of The Simpsons. And I'm talking about when it first came onto Fox, I believe, 1989. I remember it. I was a wee boy. From 1989 to probably the early 2000s, I say were the golden age of The Simpsons. Similarly, Saturday Night Live has suffered the same fate. I'm not saying that just 89 to early 2000s was golden age of SNL, but SNL sucks now! And The Simpsons suck now! There's like one... Okay, in SNL, for every 100 skits that they do, to me, there's like one or two funny ones. What's her name? McKinnon? That girl, she's still funny. She's funny. I've had such a falling out with SNL. I just don't care anymore. Just don't care about SNL. And The Simpsons is almost unwatchable, and that sucks. Maybe some of you like it, and that's fine. You know, it's fine if people like The Big Bang Theory. I don't like The Big Bang Theory. It's like a drill going into my head. The laugh tracks, I just can't get behind it. But some people like Big Bang Theory. And I've watched a few episodes, and when I forget about the laugh tracks and all the corniness, it's entertainment, I'll just say. But anyways, that was a 2-minute tangent I got off on there, and that's not what the segment was about. I've got about 9 minutes here, and I've already chewed up 2 minutes and 15 seconds of talking. Again, another behind-the-scenes look into Geek Therapy. Okay, so there's actual subjects I wanted to talk about in my final segment here, and I'm just going to get right to it. One of the big arguments, the big points of contention between console gamers and the PC master race, is that PC is superior. And I'm going to give a little secret right now. PC gaming is technically superior. Remember, I said technically. PC gaming is technically superior to console gaming. Of course it is. But the issue remains. There are some games that are exclusively on console that I, and probably many others, would like to play. The issue is, we've already spent so much... I can say damn, but I won't. I'll say darn. We spent so much darn money on our PCs that we just cannot justify going out and shelling out $400 or whatever, $300, $400, $500 for a PS4 or an Xbox just to play the 1 or 2 games we want to play. For instance, I have been waiting for The Last Guardian since 2006. The Last Guardian it's not a sequel, but it's the successor to Shadow of the Colossus, which came out for PS2, which is my favorite game of all time, other than Street Fighter. Shadow of the Colossus was amazing. So for 10 years, we've been waiting for The Last Guardian, and it finally comes out for the PS4. To play that game, I would have to go out right now and spend $500. And what am I going to do? What am I going to tell everyone? I don't owe anybody any explanation, but my own self, how am I going to justify to myself spending $500 to play one game? And unfortunately, that's kind of our only option at this point. But PlayStation has announced something neat. The PlayStation Now network is going to bring current generation PS4 games to PC in 2017, this year, through their streaming service, PlayStation Now network streaming. Kind of like networks, but for games. You know what it is. I'm not sure if The Last Guardian is going to be on that list, but I will sign up for PlayStation Now when The Last Guardian becomes available. The membership costs like $100 a year and or $20 a month. But that's going to be awesome. If The Last Guardian comes out on the PlayStation Now network, I will subscribe to the PlayStation Now network because I could much more easily justify spending a few bucks a month to play a game that I really want to play versus going out right now and spending $500, which is just ludicrous and is the only thing that has kept me from playing The Last Guardian. Is I couldn't look myself in the mirror to spend $500 on one game. Even though I spent $100 on Street Fighter V and it was broken, which we discussed last week. So let's talk about that streaming service. The issue with playing games, effectively Netflix for video games, is latency. So competitive first-person shooters are just a no-go. You're not going to play competitively over a streaming game network. The latency is too high. You pull the trigger, and then a fraction of a second later, the guy who you're shooting at is gone. That's basically effectively how it works. Plus all the input lag of your monitor and your TV, blah, blah, blah. It's just not viable. But playing a game like The Last Guardian, which doesn't rely so much on quick latency, that's going to be fabulous. I just went there. That's fine. It's my show. I can go wherever I want. All right, so the next subject, emulation. It's the kind of thing that you go to parties with other nerds and you got to find a dark little corner, go in the closet, not for 7 minutes in heaven, but 7 minutes of emulation. Talk about emulation. It's been rumored that Nintendo, for instance, Nintendo's Virtual Console. So when you go onto your Wii or your Wii U or your 3DS or now your Switch, the Virtual Console is rumored to use emulators that have already existed. That means they were developed illegally. Those emulators were developed illegally, and Nintendo essentially let these hackers do all the dirty work, and then they said, yo, give us your code or things will not go well for you. I'm not going to say that emulation is the greatest thing for the gaming industry, because it's not. Vendors want to sell games, of course, and I fully agree. But I also had the theory that people pirated. Well, we're talking about piracy. That's not the same thing as emulation. Let me get back on track. Emulation. I don't think it's such a horrible thing to emulate dead systems from virtually dead companies, like emulating the Sega Dreamcast. That's dead. The Dreamcast is dead, and Sega is mostly dead. Sega makes games for Nintendo and other vendors now, which is crazy. But emulation has served a good purpose, many believe, in that it has preserved entire eras of games from being lost to physical deterioration. And by that, I mean specifically arcade machines and arcade games. Without emulation, those games would physically turn into dust over time, never to be remembered again. But through emulation, we have backed up those ROMs and whatnot, and we can still have Pac-Man forever on a disc. On a disc? What am I talking about? You can store Pac-Man in the cloud. You can store Pac-Man on your hard drive. You can store Pac-Man on an SD card. I'm not going to tell you how. It's illegal for me to tell you how. But emulation has been good for the preservation of the history of games. And on that note, I'm out of time. 9 minutes just flew by. That's crazy. My name is Johnny Hamburger. You've been listening to Geek Therapy. You can find me now. You can find me now on Instagram. Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. I'm also at Geek Therapy KPRC on Twitter. And you can search all of my other social media. My email address. Start emailing me your geek topics. What are you interested in? And I don't care what you're interested in. If you're interested in bugs, tell me you're interested in bugs. We'll do a segment or a show about collecting bugs. We'll get into it. That's what I'm all about. I love you guys. I love you so much. Please be happy. Please take care of yourselves. Please know that you are capable of great things. You can do anything you put your mind to, and that's not just a cliche. Just love yourself, and you can do it. So send me your topics and your input. geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. That's geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. I'll get them. I'll read them. I'll give you shouts out. Let's get at it. You've been listening to Geek Therapy. I'm Johnny Hamburger. Have an amazing week.